The town was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and the local high school stood at its center. More than just a building, it was the soul of the community. Among its staff, Miss Harper was one of the most respected teachers. In her early 30s, she carried herself with intelligence, grace, and a warm presence that struck the perfect balance between discipline and kindness. Students admired her, and fellow teachers trusted her. One student in particular had caught her attention over time. Jason, a 17-year-old with a sharp intellect and a soft-spoken nature. He rarely spoke unless called upon, and even then, his voice barely rose above a murmur. Yet there was something about him, a quiet brilliance Miss Harper couldn't ignore. While others overlooked him, she saw what he could be, not just who he appeared to be. As the school year unfolded, she began spending more time with Jason, helping him after class, offering extra support, and gently pushing him to believe in himself. She encouraged him to speak more boldly, to take chances, and to recognize his own worth. For Jason, that attention was transformative. For the first time in a long time, he felt noticed, understood, important. Their connection deepened gradually. It wasn't inappropriate, at least not in any obvious way, but it was real. The way she looked at him during their one-on-one sessions, the way he listened to her as if no one else existed, it all began to feel like more than just student and teacher. Word started to spread, at first in hushed murmurs. Other teachers noticed the extra hours Jason spent in Miss Harper's classroom, but they chalked it up to her being committed to her job. Still, his friends started picking up on things. The way Jason's demeanor shifted around her, how his usual nervousness seemed to vanish in her presence. There was something there, a quiet intensity, a closeness that felt different. Personal. Maybe even private. Then came the day when everything changed. It was a late spring afternoon. Most of the school had emptied, the echo of footsteps long gone. Jason remained behind to work on a final project, and Miss Harper stayed too, sitting beside him as he typed, offering feedback and encouragement. The clock inched past 5 p.m. and still they worked, just the two of them in the fading sunlight that streamed through the classroom windows. As Jason handed over a few pages of his writing for her to review, she smiled, scanning the lines with her usual attentiveness. But then her expression shifted. Her smile faded slightly as her eyes lingered on the paper, then lifted to meet his. "You're not the same boy I met at the start of the year," she said, her voice low, almost as if she were thinking out loud. Jason stared at her, unsure of what to say. Her words hit something deep, something buried. She had become more than just a teacher to him. Her presence gave him stability, confidence, and something even he didn't fully understand. She made him feel seen in a way no one else ever had. A stillness settled between them, a pause that seemed to last forever. Their eyes held, searching. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Something intangible passed between them, something that neither could name but both could feel. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. His palms felt clammy, his mind flooded with questions. Was this just pressure from school, or was there something else happening, something unspoken but undeniably real? Miss Harper finally exhaled, the softest sigh escaping her lips. I think we need to talk about something important," Miss Harper said gently, her voice barely breaking the quiet of the empty classroom. "Jason, this relationship between us, it isn't healthy. Not in the way you might believe." Jason's stomach tightened, confusion quickly giving way to a heavy sense of dread. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice edged with worry. Her expression softened, full of care, but there was a trace of sorrow behind her eyes. "I've been your teacher, your mentor, and I've wanted to help you truly," she said, her voice sincere. But somewhere along the way the lines got blurred. "I've thought about this for a long time and I've come to realize. This can't continue. It needs to end." The words hit him like a sudden gust of cold wind. Jason's heart dropped. As much as it hurt, deep down he knew she was right. What they had built together had grown too close, too personal. A boundary had been crossed, subtly at first but undeniably. I understand," Jason murmured, barely able to get the words out. "But I don't want it to end." Miss Harper reached out and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her touch was comforting, but it carried a finality with it. "You're going to be okay, Jason," she said, her tone soft but firm. "You're stronger than you think. Smarter than you realize. You don't need me the way you believe you do. I've always seen the potential in you, and I still do. But for both our sake, we need to take a step back." Jason gave a small nod, even as emotion welled in his chest. It felt like something fragile and beautiful was slipping through his fingers, but he also knew, painfully, that this was the right path. He had leaned on her for so long, but now he had to find his own footing. The following weeks passed in a haze. He threw himself into his schoolwork, pushing aside the lingering ache he felt whenever he saw her in the halls or heard her voice in class. Slowly, he began to build his independence. He studied harder, focused deeper, and started carving out a version of himself that didn't rely on anyone else to feel whole. In the end, Jason aced his final exams. His grades a reflection not just of his intellect, but of his growth. Yet, the most important lesson he carried with him wasn't academic. It was about boundaries, about maturity, about how mentorship, while powerful, could teeter dangerously close to something more complicated if care wasn't taken. As for Miss Harper, she remained at the school, just as passionate and dedicated as ever. But something in her had changed. She carried that chapter of her life quietly, not with regret, but with solemn reflection. What had happened between her and Jason had left a mark, not a scar, but a reminder. The line between teacher and student needed to remain clear, always. Years later, Jason would look back on that chapter of his life with clarity. He would understand what it had meant, not just the connection but the way it shaped him. That time had been a turning point, a step out of adolescence and into something closer to adulthood. Miss Harper had sparked his growth, pushed him to believe in himself. But he had moved forward. And so had she. In the end, what they shared didn't end in bitterness or shame. It ended with quiet acceptance and mutual respect.